Brielle Baxter stabbed her fork into a lonely piece of grilled salmon, trying not to make eye contact with the waiter, who kept glancing over with that polite, pitying smile people reserved for women dining alone on a Friday night. She hated this, hated the silence of the white linen restaurant, hated the way the empty seat across from her made her feel like she'd been stood up even though no one was coming. She'd booked this dinner weeks ago to celebrate the promotion she didn't get. She came anyway to prove she didn't need anyone to toast her success or failure. Across the restaurant, at a corner table by the window, Callen Cross leaned back in his chair, swirling the deep red in his glass of Bordeaux. He wasn't supposed to be here tonight. He never dined in his own hotels without a private room. But after flying in from Madrid this morning, he needed something quiet, something familiar. The Billionaire was his newest luxury hotel in Manhattan, and the restaurant on the top floor was already making headlines. He noticed her the second he walked in. She sat with her shoulders squared like she was trying to convince herself she belonged here. Simple black dress, no jewelry except for a thin silver ring on her thumb, and a confidence in her posture that didn't quite match the sadness in her eyes. She didn't check her phone, didn't scroll, just picked at her food like it hadn't tasted good in a while. "Who's she?" Callen asked casually, not taking his eyes off her. His assistant, Jordan, glanced up from the menu. "No clue. Want me to ask the maitre d'?" "No," Callen said, setting down his glass. "Don't make it weird." Jordan gave him a look. "You're already watching her like you've known her in a past life." Callen ignored him. When Brielle asked for the check, Callen stood up. He didn't think. He just moved. "Excuse me," he said, stopping at her table just as she was tucking her card into the leather check holder. "I hope this isn't rude, but are you here alone?" She blinked, taken off guard. Her eyes flicked up to his. "Yeah." "Why?" Callen smiled softly. "Because I'm also dining alone, and it feels like a crime to let two people suffer through that separately." Brielle raised an eyebrow. "Are you trying to sit with me?" "Only if you'll let me." She looked him up and down. He was tall, clean-shaven, dressed in a navy suit that clearly cost more than her rent. His confidence wasn't arrogant, it was quiet, like he already knew how this would go, and wasn't trying to force it. "I don't even know your name." "Callen. Callen Cross." She paused. "Brielle. Brielle," he repeated like he was testing it. "That's beautiful." She laughed under her breath. "You really came over here to charm me?" "I came over because you looked like you could use someone to talk to," he said honestly. She hesitated for a beat, then pulled the leather check holder back and set it aside. "Fine, but if you're secretly trying to sell me something, I'm walking out." Callen chuckled. "No sales pitch. I promise." He slid into the seat across from her, waved away the waiter, and signaled for 2 glasses of champagne. They talked. Not like strangers. Like people who were tired of pretending they were fine. Brielle told him she worked in marketing for a mid-sized publishing company. That she'd been gunning for a creative director spot and lost it to someone's golf buddy. That she'd booked this dinner to celebrate something that never happened. Callen didn't tell her he owned the building they were sitting in, or that he was a billionaire who made his fortune building luxury hotels across Europe and the US. He just told her he traveled a lot, managed properties. "Sounds glamorous," she said, sipping champagne. "It's lonely sometimes," he said truthfully. The waiter returned with dessert menus, but Callen waved him off again. "Actually, if you're up for it, there's a better view upstairs." Brielle raised an eyebrow. "You're inviting me to the roof of a hotel you don't own?" Callen grinned. "Something like that." She hesitated, then stood. "All right, let's see the view." He led her to a private elevator tucked behind a velvet rope. The doors opened without a keycard, and she glanced at him suspiciously. "Are you sure we're allowed up here?" "I'm very sure." When the elevator doors opened onto a private rooftop terrace with hanging lights, soft music, and a fire pit crackling in the center, Brielle stopped in her tracks. There was no one else up there. It was stunning. "Okay," she said slowly. "This is not normal." "I don't do normal," Callen said, walking toward the railing. "Who are you?" she asked. He turned to face her, his hands in his pockets. "Does it matter?" She tilted her head. "It does if you're trying to murder me." He laughed. "I promise I'm not a murderer." She walked to the edge of the terrace, looking out over the glittering skyline. "This is insane. I was eating salmon alone an hour ago. And now you're here," he said, stepping beside her. There was something quiet about the moment, something that made her chest tighten. "You're not telling me something," she said. "Maybe, but tonight isn't about that." "Then what is it about?" He looked at her with a seriousness that made her breath catch. "It's about this," Callen said. "You, me, right now." She didn't respond right away, just looked out at the city, her heart suddenly doing things it hadn't done in a long time. The wind picked up, brushing a strand of hair across her cheek. Callen reached out and tucked it behind her ear. "Don't disappear after tonight," he said softly. She looked at him. "Why do you care?" "Because I haven't felt like this in a long time either." They stood there for a moment, the city roaring below, silence stretching between them. Then, slowly, Brielle smiled. "Okay," she said quietly. "I won't disappear." And Callen knew he wasn't going to let her. The next morning, Brielle stood in front of her closet, towel wrapped tightly around her, as if the right outfit might explain what last night actually was. She'd woken up replaying his words, his touch on her cheek, the way he looked at her like he wasn't used to needing anyone but suddenly did. She hadn't given him her number. He hadn't asked for it. But something in the way he said, "Don't disappear," made her think he already had a plan not to let her. Still, she hadn't expected the sleek black car idling outside her apartment building when she stepped out for work. A man in a dark suit stepped toward her. "Miss Baxter." She looked at him warily. "Yes, there's a message for you." He handed her a folded card, embossed with her name in elegant script. Inside, in neat handwriting, "The universe doesn't give out second chances easily. Don't make me chase you. See?" She blinked. "Is this a joke?" "No, ma'am," the driver said. "I've been instructed to take you to breakfast, if you'll allow it." She stared at the car, then at the driver again. "This is unusual." He smiled politely. "Mr. Cross said you'd say that." She hesitated only a moment longer before stepping into the car. "Fine, but I'm not missing work, so this better be quick." The ride was smooth, silent. When the car pulled up to a brownstone in the West Village, she stepped out to find Callen waiting at the gate, sleeves rolled up, holding 2 coffees. "You stalked me," she said, eyes narrowing. "I found you," he corrected. "Big difference. You sent a car to my apartment. That's not stalking. It's breakfast." She crossed her arms. "How did you even know where I live?" "I didn't until you paid for dinner last night," he said, holding out one of the coffees. "Your billing address was on the receipt." Her eyebrows shot up. "That's mildly invasive. I prefer resourceful." She took the coffee anyway. "You're very confident for someone who barely knows me." "I'm very interested in someone who barely knows me," he said simply, pushing open the gate and motioning her inside. "Come on. It's just a meal." The interior of the brownstone was warm, flooded with light, and filled with the smell of something buttery and sweet. A long table stretched across the kitchen, covered in platters of fresh fruit, croissants, eggs, and pastries that looked like they came from a Parisian bakery. She stopped at the threshold. "Is this real?" "Sit," he said, pulling out a chair for her. She sat slowly. "You do this for everyone you meet at restaurants?" He leaned against the counter. "No, this is a first." She studied him as he moved casual, but not careless. Everything about him was deliberate. "So, what's your angle?" "No angle," he said. "I liked you. I still do." "You don't even know me," she said. "I know you didn't flinch when I asked to join you. I know you didn't pretend to be someone you're not. And I know you didn't ask me what I do or how much I make, which is rare in this city." She picked up a croissant and tore it in half. You make it sound like you're used to being hunted. I am. She paused. So who are you really? He walked over to the table and picked up a strawberry. I own this brownstone. And the restaurant from last night. And the hotel above it. Her fingers froze on the croissant. You're serious? Yes. She let out a low breath. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to see the money first. She looked at him, more curious than offended. And now? Now I want you to know what I can give you. Brielle leaned back. You think I'm someone who wants to be given things? No, he said immediately. I think you're someone who's used to earning everything. I admire that. But I also think you deserve to be surprised. She chewed slowly, watching him. You're not what I expected. I'm not trying to be. She set the croissant down. You said this was a first. What did you mean? I don't chase people, he said. My life's structured. Efficient. I build things. I plan everything. But last night wasn't planned. She looked down, then back at him. And if I hadn't let you sit with me, I would have figured out another way to talk to you. She laughed softly. Persistent. Only when it matters. Her phone buzzed in her bag. She ignored it. I have to go soon, she said. I have a meeting. I know, he said. I already called your company and told them you'd be an hour late. Told them it was for a personal emergency. Her mouth dropped open. You what? I own the building your company works out of, he said calmly. Your CEO answered on the first ring. She stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. You can't just interfere in my life like that. I didn't interfere, he said, stepping toward her. I made sure you didn't have to choose between a moment and a meeting. She stared at him, chest rising. You don't get to decide what matters to me. He stopped short. You're right. The silence that followed was heavy but not angry. Just real. I'm not a project, she said. I know. I don't need saving. I don't think you do. She looked at the untouched food, the flowers on the windowsill, the way the light framed his face. This is too much. I can scale it back, he said. But not my interest in you. She met his eyes. Then don't try to own pieces of my life. Callen nodded once. Fair. She grabbed her bag. I have to go. I'll walk you out. They walked in silence to the car. He opened the door for her but didn't reach for her hand. Just before she got in, she turned to him. You're not easy to read. Neither are you. She hesitated. I don't know what this is. I do, he said quietly. It's the beginning. She got in without another word. The door closed. The car pulled away. And Callen stood on the sidewalk, watching the street long after she was gone. 3 days passed. Brielle told herself she was fine. She buried herself in client launches, ignored the texts from coworkers gossiping about the company's sudden interest in refreshing their brand strategy, and worked late every night with headphones in and her phone off. She hadn't heard from Callen. Not directly. But when she walked into the office on Tuesday, there was a vase of white anemones on her desk, flowers she had once mentioned in a college essay as her mother's favorite. She'd never told anyone at work that. She wasn't sure she'd told anyone at all in years. On Wednesday, a courier hand delivered a parcel to her building's doorman. Inside was a first-edition copy of her favorite childhood novel inscribed with a single line penned in blue ink for the girl who never needed saving, only recognizing. She didn't call him. She didn't send it back. But she also didn't stop thinking about him. By Thursday night, she was pacing her apartment in bare feet, wine glass untouched on the windowsill. The city blinked below her, alive and chaotic, but she felt like she was moving through it out of sync. She couldn't decide if Callen had shaken her or woken her. She didn't hear the knock until it came again, 3 firm raps against the door. She opened it to find a woman standing in the hallway dressed in tailored navy slacks and a crisp white blouse. Ms. Baxter, the woman asked. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Cross. He asked me to give you this. She handed Brielle a slim envelope, nodded once, and walked away before she could ask anything. Inside was a single invitation card, tonight. 8 o'clock. Wear something that makes you feel unstoppable. The car will wait 10 minutes. No expectations. Only possibilities. See, Brielle stared at it. She checked the time. It was 7:17. She didn't even try to talk herself out of it. She didn't weigh her dignity or her pride. She just moved. 40 minutes later, she stepped outside in a black jumpsuit that clung to her like confidence. The car was there, engine low and waiting. The driver didn't speak, just opened the door and tipped his head. The ride took longer than she expected. They moved through parts of the city she didn't recognize, eventually pulling into a secluded driveway framed by iron gates and ivy-covered walls. The house beyond was modern, angular, and glittering with soft lights. Brielle stepped out slowly. Callen met her at the door, hands in his pockets, eyes unreadable. "You came," he said. "I had 10 minutes to decide," she replied. That felt like a challenge. He smiled, but not in the way people smile when they're trying to charm. It was subtle, careful. "I wanted to show you something," he said, stepping aside. She followed him inside. The house opened into a long gallery, unexpected in its elegance. The walls were lined with photographs, black and white portraits of people in motion. A woman dancing barefoot in the rain. A man holding a child upside down mid-laugh. A boy staring out a window with the kind of stillness that said everything. "These are yours?" Brielle asked, pausing in front of a photo of a woman laughing with her eyes closed. "Yes. You took them." He nodded. She turned to him. "You're a photographer." "I was," he said. "Before the hotels." She studied another photo, a man and woman parting hands at a train station. "Why did you stop?" "I didn't stop. I just never showed anyone." Brielle turned slowly. "Why show me?" "Because you saw me before you knew anything about me," he said. "And because I see you." She looked away, unsettled. "I don't want to be someone's muse," she said. Callen didn't move closer. "You're not. You're someone I want to know. Without pretense. Without scripts." She exhaled through her nose. "You make everything sound like an offer I can't refuse." "It's not an offer," he said. "It's an invitation. You can walk away at any time." She looked around the room again, the intimacy in the images, the quiet vulnerability in the way they were displayed. "You brought me here to show me who you are," she said. "Yes. And if I don't like what I see?" He met her eyes. "Then I'll respect that." She walked to the next photo. It was a child holding a kite, the wind catching just the edge of it. The emotion was clear hope caught mid-flight. "Who is this?" she asked. "My brother," Callen answered. "He died when we were kids." She turned toward him slowly. "I'm sorry. It changed everything," he said. "Made me need control. Structure. I built my world so nothing could surprise me again. But I surprised you." "Yes." She stepped closer, not touching, just standing in the same space. "I don't know what I'm doing here," she said. "You don't have to know," he said. "Just don't lie to yourself about what you feel." She studied him. "You're not at all who I thought. I hope I never am." She didn't kiss him. Not yet. Instead, she turned and walked the gallery again, slower this time, letting the weight of his world settle around her. And Callen followed, not with words, but with presence. Because sometimes the beginning of something real doesn't start with a confession. It starts with being seen. Brielle stood at the edge of a rooftop garden she hadn't known existed. The sky above was beginning to soften into twilight, casting a pinkish hue on the glass towers surrounding them. She didn't speak. Neither did Callen. Below them, the city was buzzing. But up here, it was quiet, too quiet for her thoughts to hide. "You didn't bring me here just to look at your photographs," she said, breaking the silence as she turned to face him. "No," Callen admitted. "I brought you here because I needed you to understand who I am before I asked you something." Her brows pulled together. "Ask me what?" He reached into the pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small, navy blue envelope. No seal, no flourish, just clean, simple elegance. He handed it to her. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single ticket. First class. Paris. Brielle blinked. "Is this a proposal?" "No," Callen said, his voice calm. "It's an invitation. For 5 days. No assistants, no distractions. Just us. I have a penthouse there. I've never brought anyone." She stared at the ticket. "You want me to drop everything and fly to Paris with you?" "Yes. You don't know if I snore. I'll take the risk." She didn't laugh. Her voice was low, cautious. You don't think this is too fast? I think when something's right, it doesn't follow rules, Callen said. It just fits. She folded the ticket and looked at him. You didn't ask if I'd say yes. I didn't want to push, but I hoped you would. She studied his features. He wasn't uncertain, but he wasn't demanding either. He looked like a man who had made peace with whatever came next. I can't be something temporary, she said. I'm not looking for temporary. Brielle exhaled. Then what are you looking for? He stepped closer. Someone I can build something with without walls. She didn't answer. She wasn't sure she could. Her fingers gripped the envelope tighter. I need time, she said. You have it, Callen replied. But I leave tomorrow. When she left that night, she didn't tell him goodbye. He didn't ask for one. The next morning, she stood in her bedroom, suitcase open, then closed, then open again. She paced once, twice. Her passport sat on the edge of her desk like a question. She didn't call anyone. She didn't ask permission. At the airport, the attendant at the private terminal greeted her by name and led her to the lounge. She still hadn't decided if she was going to board when the door opened and Callen walked in. He stopped when he saw her, something unspoken flickering in his eyes. I didn't think you'd come, he said. I didn't plan to, she said honestly. But then I realized I'd regret not knowing what this could be. His gaze softened. Then let's find out. The flight wasn't showy. There was no orchestra on board. No fireworks. Just two people sitting close enough to touch but not needing to. They talked about their worst decisions. Their best regrets. She told him about the city she almost moved to for a man who didn't fight for her. He told her about the day he walked away from photography and how empty the world felt for a while after. In Paris, it rained the first day. They didn't go to the Eiffel Tower. They didn't take posed photos. They walked side streets and bought pastries from shops where no one spoke English. She tried on a pair of shoes in a tucked-away boutique and walked out with them because he said the way she moved in them made the street look like a runway. One night, they sat on the balcony of the penthouse, a bottle of wine between them, the moon tangled in iron and stone. I've been thinking, Callen said, watching the sky. I built a world where I didn't need anyone, and I was proud of that, until I realized I was just building walls. Brielle didn't interrupt. You're not who I imagined I'd fall for, he continued. You challenge me. You don't let me hide behind charm or money. You don't need me. But I want to be needed by you. She turned toward him. I don't need anyone to complete me, Callen. I don't want to complete you, he said. I want to stand beside you, exactly as you are. Her chest tightened, not with fear but with recognition. You're not afraid of how fast this is? I'm terrified, he said, but I'm more afraid of going back to a life without you in it. She didn't say anything for a long while. Then quietly, when I sat alone at that table last week, I thought I was invisible. You weren't, he said. You were just waiting to be seen by someone who saw everything. She reached for his hand. Then stopped looking. I'm right here. He pulled her closer, not urgently, but like someone anchoring a piece of himself. Back in New York, they didn't return to their old lives. They merged them. He started showing his photographs publicly. She helped him curate the first gallery exhibit. When the press asked about the woman in the photos, he simply said, she gave me the courage to remember who I was. She left her job and opened her own agency with the seed money he offered not as a gift, but as a partner. She didn't take his name yet, but he wore her initials on a bracelet she had engraved for him. The next time she dined at the Billionaire, she wasn't alone. She sat across from Callen, laughter in her eyes, and when the waiter came by, he didn't glance at her with pity. He asked if they wanted the usual. They didn't, because nothing about them was usual. And as the city glittered around them, Callen raised his glass and said, To the best decision I ever made sitting down at your table. Brielle clinked her glass gently against his. To never dining alone again. The gallery buzzed with quiet admiration, the kind of hush that followed awe. On the far wall, a single black and white photograph drew the most attention. A woman standing in the rain, face tilted to the sky, the outline of Paris behind her. Her expression wasn't joy or sorrow, it was something deeper. Freedom. Brielle stood to the side, watching people study the image. She didn't need to read the nameplate below it. She remembered the exact moment Callen had captured it. No posing, no warning. Just her, laughing quietly to herself in a moment of unexpected peace. A man in a navy blazer leaned in to examine the photo more closely, then turned to her. "There's something honest about this one," he said. "Like the photographer loved her." "He did," Brielle replied, her voice calm but certain. The man smiled politely and moved on. Callen walked up behind her, his hand finding hers easily. "They keep stopping at that one," he said. "I'm not surprised," Brielle replied. "She looks like she finally let herself be seen." He glanced at her. "You were never invisible, Brielle. The world just wasn't paying attention." "Maybe," she said, "but you did." They left the gallery together after the last guest trickled out, stepping into the cool air of late spring. His driver waited at the curb, but they passed him wordlessly and kept walking instead. The city felt different now. Not because it had changed, but because they had. They didn't need the same places, the same markers to define what they were. Every block they passed had become theirs, not because of what they'd done there, but because of how they saw each other in it. "I spoke to the board at the foundation," Callen said as they turned a corner. "They approved the grant proposal for the youth arts program." Brielle stopped walking. "Seriously? That's incredible. You got them to sign off on a multi-year endowment." "I told them the city doesn't need another marble lobby. It needs more places for kids to tell their stories." She looked at him with the kind of pride that didn't need embellishment. "You're more than I expected. I had a good reason to become more." They kept walking until they reached a quiet garden tucked behind a row of pre-war buildings. The gate was unlocked. Callen pushed it open, revealing a path lined with hanging lanterns and soft, trailing ivy. A table waited at the center, lit from above by a single chandelier suspended between two trees. Brielle stopped, stunned. "What is this?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped toward the table, lifted a small velvet box from the centerpiece, and turned to her. She took a breath, but he held up a hand. "No speeches," he said. "You already know everything I'd say. You know how you changed my life. How you made it real. How you never asked me for anything but gave me everything." He opened the box. Inside was a ring unlike any she'd ever seen. A single emerald set in a delicate gold band flanked by two tiny sapphires. Not flashy, not loud, but unmistakably rare. "I don't want a grand answer," he said. "I just want the truth. Will you build something with me? Not for show. Not for the world. Just for us." Brielle didn't cry. She didn't gasp or cover her mouth. She stepped forward, took the ring, and slid it onto her finger herself. "Yes," she said simply. Callen exhaled as if he'd been holding his breath for months. They didn't wait 6 months to marry. They didn't throw a gala or rent a castle. They exchanged vows in the rooftop garden of the Billionaire with only 12 people watching. The same spot where they'd first stood beneath the stars, strangers bound by something they hadn't yet named. He wore a dark gray suit. She wore a silk jumpsuit with gold heels. There were no bridesmaids, no speeches, no toasts. Just two people who had stopped pretending they didn't want everything. After it, they danced alone on the rooftop to a violinist playing a song neither of them recognized but would never forget. They didn't fly to the Maldives or Santorini. They took a train upstate, stayed in a converted farmhouse with no Wi-Fi, and spent 4 days cooking, hiking, and reading old novels to each other in front of a fireplace. She carried her agency forward, hiring 2 new creatives and turning down a contract from a tech giant because the brand didn't align with her values. He continued building hotels, but now only in cities he wanted to explore with her by his side. They bought a townhouse in Brooklyn with a small garden and windows that caught the morning sun just right. They filled the walls with art from local kids and hung one of his photographs above the mantel, a candid shot of Brielle standing in their kitchen, barefoot, holding a mug, smiling at something out of frame. They didn't rush children. They didn't map it out. But 2 years later, when she told him in the middle of the night that she was pregnant, he didn't say a word. He just pulled her into his arms and held her until morning. Their daughter was born in autumn. They named her Elara. She had Brielle's eyes and Callen's quiet focus. From the first day, she was a force. On her first birthday, Callen gave Brielle another box. Inside was a pendant with a tiny engraving on the back. "For every version of you, I will always stay." Brielle looked up at him across their garden, where Elara was toddling after a butterfly. "You still think it's possible to build a life without walls?" she asked. "No," Callen said. "I think we built something better. A life with windows, so the light always finds us." And it did. Every day. In every form. Because when they stopped pretending they didn't need anyone, they found everything they'd never dared ask for. Together. Always.